Hello, everyone. The Kentucky Patriot, and we're going to conclude the series, but we saved the best for last. He's a wealth of knowledge in a lot of areas, but we really want to save this last video by New York Prepper. And again, thank you so much for coming on. But this last video is going to be about basically survival and, of course, prepping. With a name like New York Prepper, of course, we certainly didn't want to leave without ending this series, the last video in this series, with prepping. And then that's what his channel is New York Prepper. Of course, he does some other things too, like ballistic testing and said some current events. And I know it's going to be really hard to conclude all your channel and all your knowledge into one video, but just real quick, especially when we can gear it toward whatever you feel like you which direction you want to go. But I would really like maybe to at least start out, if you would give some advice to maybe some folks that are new to prepping or just kind of looking around at current events and thinking, man, where do I start? Because I think there's a lot of people that seems like wanting to get into it, wanting to start, wanting to question some stuff, but they don't know where to start. Sorry, my dog got in the blinds there. But would you give some maybe some newcomers, because it can be overwhelming, and there's many sources out there, so many things that bombard who's right, who's wrong, what's good advice, what isn't. But we want to come to a guy like you with a great source of information and knowledge and experience to maybe pick your brain. And would you care to give us some tips, hints, advice on survival prepping? And because we never know what we're going to face, what can somebody do in your advice and mind to really begin to start the journey, or start to prepare, or start to better prepare themselves for whatever may arise?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that people need to realize is that you're not going to be able to get all the preps that you need within a matter of a few days or a few weeks. Prepping is a long-term thing. It's like building a city. You don't build a city overnight. It takes years. So that's the first thing you have to kind of understand, that you have to do like a self-assessment and see, what do I have, what do I need. That's the first thing that I do that continuously. Every couple of weeks I think about, okay, what are some things that I need to get that I don't have? What are some skills that I need to polish up? What are some, things that I'm not prepared for, and then what are some things that I'm already prepared for that I don't have to spend time on? So no matter what level of prepping if you're a beginner or you're more experienced, you should always do like a self-assessment, and it's an ongoing process. It's like a lifestyle. It's not so much, like for me, it's prepping it's kind of like firearms. It's not like something that I open a magazine and I read guns and ammo, and then all of a sudden I go to the store and I buy whatever was in the magazine. It's something that I'm passionate about. I study firearms. I learn about it. So for me, prepping is a lifestyle. And you should always do self-assessments, though, and just realize that it's not a short-term journey. It's a long-term thing. You're not going to be able to prepare yourself overnight. It takes a long time. And like people like me, that like I have a lot of people that, contact me and they ask me the same question, where do I start? What do I do? And my answer is just start with whatever you can start with, because the longer you wait to start prepping, it's going to take longer to achieve that higher level of preparedness, so don't delay it. If, let's say, you're limited on a budget and you don't have a lot of money to buy, hundreds of rounds of ammo, or you don't have money to buy, 1,000 cans of tuna, start small and just slowly build up, and let's say like you go to the store and you go shopping for groceries. Every time you go to the store to buy groceries, get a couple extra cans of chicken, or get maybe an extra can of oats, or an extra box of pasta or something. And, after a couple of weeks, a couple of months, you'll see that your food supply will go up. So it's a slow process. Don't, like, my big advice to people is don't get overwhelmed And because it can really get overwhelming and intimidating, because you think about all the different scenarios out there and what could possibly happen, it can really freak you out, and you kind of get into like a panic mode where, you know, you'll run up your credit card and start buying everything you see. And that's not necessarily good. You know, it's a slow process, you know, so don't rush it. Do the best you can, and realize that it's a long-term commitment. It's not just, you know, you're not going to be able to get yourself prepared in 2 weeks if you just started. So it's a slow process. That's a big thing. But, you know, generally speaking, like, food is obviously very important. Food and water are the two most important things. And self-defense goes along with it. Shelter, self-defense, water, food, those are like the big four of prepping, you know. So, you know, you want to be able to sustain yourself and your family, you know, with nutritious food. And I'm not just talking about like a couple of days, but, you know, for a few months. What happens if, you know, the supply chain breaks down and there's no food getting into the grocery stores and you're on your own? You know, you want to have, at least in my opinion, everybody should have at least a month of food, ideally 3 or 6 months. You know, that's like the ideal place to be. But you want to definitely have a good storage of food. Water, you want to have not just storing water, because a lot of people, they think I'm just going to buy like a bunch of water bottles and leave them in the basement. But what happens if you go through the water? How are you going to replenish your water? Because eventually you're going to go through your water. So you need to think about how are you going to replenish your water? Do you have any kind of river near you, or stream or pond or lake where you can go to refill your water? If so, do you have a way to get that water and collect it? Do you have a way to treat it and purify it to make it drinkable? Do you have a way to collect rainwater? You know, those are some things to think about. Also, if you live like where I live, in a colder climate, or even where you live, you have to think about heating in the wintertime, because, you know, if the grid goes down, if we're talking about a long-term situation where it's not just, you know, power's out for 3 days, that's not a big deal, you know. But if we're talking about weeks or months where the power is out, and we're talking about some kind of a disaster, you know, you have to have a way to heat your house and heat, you know, at least a portion of your house, and keep your family warm, keep yourself warm. So that's another thing, is heating. And shelter, you want to have some kind of shelter. You want to have a roof over your head, ideally. And, you know, security is important, because you could have all the food that you want. You could have 6 months of food stored up in your house, but the first guy comes to your house with a shotgun or a rifle, and he points it to your head and says, "Give me all your supplies," and you have no way of fighting back, then all that prep, all the preps you made are useless at that point. So, you know, those are the big four, is, in my opinion, shelter, water, food, and security. And then if you're in like a northern climate, you know, heating is something to think about too. So that's where I would start.
Those are really great points. And I love what you said about self-assessments. I think that happens with anything, really. If we're really honest with ourselves, we can learn a lot. I know even when it's not a survival situation, but in an electric storm, or if a snowstorm or ice storm, it knocks your power out, whatever the case may be, if you go 1, 2, 3, 4 days without electricity, and you start realizing you don't have this or you don't have that, or boy, that would be nice, then that's just for a day or two. If things really get bad, that should really kind of be a self-assessment of what if it did go a week or two, what would I need, what would I prepare for? I think that's fantastic. Let me pick your brain on this, because I have mixed feelings. I know kind of where I stand on this, but I've heard people talk about a community or a group or a buddy system, and I know that does have its benefits, but I also think we need to take into consideration who is really our friend. And I don't mean to sound like I'm paranoid of everybody, but that just because you grill out with a guy on a weekend every 6 months, can you really trust him with food? I mean, I'm not trying to sound like a paranoid, you know, that you can't trust people, but what is your advice on like a buddy system on a group or a community, or should you be just solo, self-sufficient? Because like I said, people that you can just go fishing with, are they going to be there if the food runs low, if water runs low, if things really get bad? I mean, how many people can you really trust, honestly? I mean, I'll let you run with it whatever way you want to, but that's something that it gets brought up a lot, and I was going to see what you thought about that.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on the trusting thing. I think that you should be prepared to deal with the situation on your own, but it's always good to have somebody that you can go to. It's always harder to try to go alone and do everything on your own. It's not impossible, but I like to think about it as having strategic alliances with different people, meaning like you can fend for yourself, you can provide food for your family, you can defend your family, but it's good for you to have neighbors that, think the same way that you do, and people that are on the same page, that, you're not reliant on them, they're not reliant on you. They have their own preps, you have your own preps. But if something happens, let's say you have a group of marauders, bad guys that come into the neighborhood and they want to, rape and pillage your town. Obviously, you want to get together with some of your buddies that you trust to confront them. So in that situation, a group is good, but you don't want to put yourself in a situation where it's like a cult. There's a lot of these, groups where people are sharing information about how many preps they have and how much ammo they have, and they train together and they do everything together, which sounds good on paper, but then everybody knows everything about you. And what happens if all these guys that you trained with, all these guys that you hung out with, and you did campouts together, and you talked about, what areas you were deficient in and how many supplies you had? What happens is when the balloon goes up, those people that you think are supposed to be on your side may show up to your house and take everything, and take it by force. They could, you don't know, a lot of these groups, they could be creating these groups for the purpose of gathering information on preppers in their area. So when the balloon does go up, they have a list of people. They know what supplies you have pretty much. They know what firearms and your skills. And then they can just go to these people's houses and raid them and take everything. So it sounds kind of paranoid, but it can happen. So I'm not for like those types of groups, because I think they're risky. If you do get involved in that type of a group, I think it's just, don't divulge too much information about what you have. Don't tell people, I don't have any guns. Can somebody show me how to shoot? That's just like advertising to everybody in the group that you have no weapons. That's like, and people remember that, that they're going to remember that. It's going to stick in the back of their head. So, blend in, don't like let people know everything you have. If you're going to be a part of that kind of a group, keep things secret. Don't just put everything out there. But I'm a big fan of neighbors. Your neighbors are really a very critical component in your security in a collapse of society, because your neighbors are the people that are right around you, So if you can create a good relationship with your neighbors, and of course, you're not going to be able to get along with all your neighbors. I've had neighbors that were very nasty. Even I was very nice to them, and they were just nasty people, So, but I'm sure everybody can find a few people in their town or in their immediate area that they know that they can rely on, that they're good, solid people. There's people out there like that. Not everybody's a bad guy, So I'm a big fan of getting to know your neighbors and having, strategic alliances with other preppers, but you should be able to fend for yourself, and don't divulge all your information to other people. Don't put it all out there. That's my big thing, So
let me ask you this. I don't want to say the word because words get flagged, but it starts with an M and it's in the Constitution. Okay. But it's a group of people, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about,
Mhm.
And a lot of times they'll say you should join a collective that, like I said, starts with an M, that's in the
Yep.
Constitution. But let me ask you this: regardless of whether society crashes or not, and you can agree or disagree. I'll let you get your thoughts on it. But I think we're living in a time when even our own, not to sound too paranoid or worried about Big Brother too much, but we're living in a time when our own government, I think, can potentially have red flag laws or can target a group like that, even though it's constitutional, and begin to declare them as domestic terrorists, even if they're not, even if they haven't done anything wrong, because they say, why are they training? Why are they getting in groups? They're online, they're recruiting. There's just things that
Yep.
can happen. What do you feel about them? And if we do decide to do something like that, should we join a collective group and call it A team or a collective group or Kentucky
Right.
Fisherman's Club or whatever, and not use the
Right.
word that starts with an M to
Right.
not target ourselves? And we can call it whatever group we want, structure it whatever we want, but not actually use that word in the group
Yeah.
name, or never breathe that word or call that word. And even in the people in the community, that they won't know that word. So that way, if I say, me and you're part of a fisherman's club, hey, we can still fish in this club, but while we're fishing, we can also maybe look ahead and maybe even
Right.
train on the weekends or whatever. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, that's a big reason why I'm not a huge fan of those groups, because you these days you never know, the government, they've pretty much infiltrated all of those types of groups, especially the bigger, well-known ones. It started back in the 90s when they did all those raids in Idaho and Texas, the government during the Clinton administration, Ruby Ridge and all that stuff. That's when they really started cracking down on those groups, and we even saw just what was it, like a year or two ago, the guy who was the leader of was it the Oath Keepers or the 3% movement? He was like he turned out to be an informant for the FBI, and he was the leader of the group. So yeah, you don't know a lot of these groups. You don't know who these people are. They could just be informants, and that's another thing too. So yeah, you have to really be careful. And I'm a big supporter of law enforcement, but let's be honest, the federal government does not like those types of groups, and they'll try to find any little thing that they can find to bust you. Any little mistake that you make or something, that's how they operate. They're just looking for one small thing that they can pin against you to have a reason to ruin your life. Even if it's constitutional or if it's moral, it doesn't matter. It's not the law. We have many laws in this country that are not godly, they're not constitutional, and they're enforced every day.
Yeah.
So you really have to be careful. I agree. You want to be very careful with that. But yes, that's a good idea. Keep it. Not obvious. Keep it. Kind of clandestine. That's a smart idea, and just only really have people that you trust. Don't just start inviting random people that you don't really know. Like you really want to know who these people are, that that they're solid, they're your best friends, they're your immediate family, people that you've known a very long time, and you've had a chance to see what their character is like. That's critical. So yeah, I would just pick people that have good characters.
And if at all possible, would you recommend keeping the group small and with people that because like you said, with that group, that was their leader, but yet, you know what I'm saying? So you think people, but you really don't. But if you went to high school with these people, or you grew up with these people, or or something, I think we stand a better chance of getting good, solid people. Not that, like I said, there's not great people out there, but does that make sense? Because you think people, but there's wolves in sheep's clothing. And I'm a huge supporter of law enforcement as well.
Yep.
The people that I know in law enforcement, both city, county, and state where I live, they're constitutionalists, they're patriots. I love them. But when you start
Yep.
dealing with different administrations and different,
Yep.
government organizations
Agencies.
and
Yeah.
that's what I was getting ready to say. I didn't want to say the three letters, but the that
Alphabet
something you
groups.
drink, something you smoke, and then something you shoot. Those agencies, they don't have your best interest in mind. They don't care about
No.
the Constitution, and they don't care. And I'm not trying to sound like I said, rebellious or anything, but it's something that to keep in mind. And if we can just protect our families under the radar, I think we're going to be better off than kind of drawing any unwanted attention, I guess is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's very important.
And let's ask about this as far as survival, prepping, or whatever. What do you feel about bug in / bug out, pros, cons? How much should we prepare in each? Because I've seen people, and I know you have, that is really heavy in one or the other, and really they put all their eggs in one basket. So should you put all your eggs in one basket and have this plan? I mean, maybe depending on where you live in an apartment high rise or something, maybe you should put your eggs maybe in a bigger basket of bug out, whatever the case may be. But what is your advice or opinions or suggestions for folks when they are looking at a really bad situation that may be a long term, as far as bug in, bug out, and what kind of how they should kind of focus their, whether it's buying or attention or skill sets?
I'm glad you mentioned that. So first of all, I will say that one of the most important things for somebody who wants to get into preparedness, it goes with the self-assessment that I was talking about earlier, is your primary residence, where you live, where you work. You have to do an assessment and determine what are the dangers in this area where I'm living. And, do I live right next to a nuclear war target? Am I 15 miles, am I 15 miles away from a nuclear missile field and Russia's going to hit them with bombs and I'm going to get destroyed? So your location is everything. If you live close to like a danger zone, and to me, a danger zone is a big city. Every big city in the country is a danger zone because you have millions of people squeezed into a small area, and they're reliant on the city to provide them water. The pumps have to pump the water into the faucet. If the power goes out, those pumps stop. People don't have water. People don't have gas. People don't have heat. They can't cook. They don't have sewage. The sewage can't go out of their apartments. There's no trash pickup. So my number one tip is, if you live in a big city, think about getting out, move out. That's my number one tip. Living in a big city is really one of the biggest hazards, in my opinion, especially in the times we live in now. If it was like 10, 20, 30 years ago when the world was a little bit more peaceful, I would say, yeah, it's not as bad. But nowadays with, terrorism, war, pandemics, who knows what else, it's really just not a good place to be. And then obviously big cities, you have the culture in a lot of big cities is not the best. You have a lot of tyrannical mayors that impose restrictions, and big cities are always the first ones to get locked down, like we saw with everything that's going on. Like New York City, all the big cities, they were the first ones to get locked down because that's where all the people are. So they want to control the people. That's where the highest concentration of people are. So the big cities are always the biggest target for tyrants. Foreign invaders are always going to go after the dense areas of people. So if you can get out of a big city, even if you can't live in the country, but if you can live in a suburb and you're a good 30 miles away from, let's say, a large city, but let's say you have to commute to the city for work, like most Americans, just living even in an outer suburb is so much better, because then if something happens, it's much easier to evacuate. Sure. If you have, let's say, a bug out location in the mountains and you live in downtown, whatever, big city America, getting out of that big city to get to your cabin is going to be nearly impossible.
Great point.
But if you're in a suburb, if you're even like in a suburb, a basic suburb, it's going to be much easier to get out. So think about your location. And if it's possible, relocate and move to a safer area, move further away from the city. If you can get into the country, that's the best scenario, you know, living in a good neighborhood in the country. You don't want to live with, like, you know, people that are financially struggling, because then that could be a problem too. If the society collapses, they could, you know, try to rob you or whatever. But, you know, getting away from the big city is critical, in my opinion, for a preparedness. So that would be a big thing right there. And bugging in and bugging out, I think for me personally, and I think a lot of people, bugging out should be a last resort. It shouldn't be the first thing that you go to, unless, like you said, you live in a big city, in a high-rise apartment building. You know, you don't want to be stuck there with no water, you know, roving gangs all over the place. You want to get out, obviously, right? So yeah, in that situation, you should have bug out plans, but I think you have to also be realistic, because you know, even if you're in the best physical condition, even if you're an excellent marksman, even if you're an excellent survivalist, bugging out on foot is going to be very difficult if we're talking about a real world situation. I mean, you know, walking on foot 30, 50, 60, 100 miles is difficult even for the most experienced people. So you have to be kind of realistic with your abilities. And you know, if you think you're going to throw a 50 or 100 pound backpack on your back and walk 100 miles to the mountains, good luck. You know, it's just not going to happen, in my opinion. I mean, for most people, unless if you're a very experienced survivalist, of course it can happen, you know, or if you're somebody that hikes the Appalachian Trail and you're good at hiking and backpacking, then of course. But there's other factors to consider too, is, you know, in a collapse of society or a major disaster, you're not just going to be hiking to your bug out location. There's going to be other things you have to worry about. So, you know, you don't know what you're going to encounter along the way. So you should have plans to bug in, and you should have plans to bug out, you know. But to me, bugging out should be a last resort, because really your home is, you know, especially where you live every day, you know, the area, you're familiar with the surroundings, you know, the people. So you have the home field advantage, versus if you bug out to the mountains, you don't really know that area. Maybe you go there once a year on weekends or something. You don't really know the area well. So yeah, bugging out to me is the last resort, and you don't know what you're going to encounter when you're bugging out. Like, even if you have a vehicle and you load your vehicle up with supplies, you could get halfway to your bug out location, but you hit a traffic jam, you know, and you can't get through. Or somebody could even ambush you on the road. They could put a spike strip out and they could rob you and take your supplies. So to me, bugging out is a hazard. You're exposing yourself to a lot of different dangers when you bug out. You know, you're exposing yourself to the elements, the weather. You know, what happens if you have to bug out in the wintertime? And if we're talking about a situation where there's a cessation of services, you know, you're not going to have snow plows. You're not going to have guys coming around, highway departments throwing salt on the road, and your bug out location is in the mountains. What if you get to the mountains and there's a blizzard, you know, and you have 2 feet of snow and you get stuck halfway there, and you're stuck in your car with your kids, and it's frigid outside, and you're loaded up with all your supplies, but you didn't actually get there. So you're exposing yourself unnecessarily. So the risk, the reward has to be worth the risk, you know. That's my opinion. So
that's some, you know, great points. And I think it's, and I've mentioned this in other videos, so being realistic with ourselves. Like you said, I mean, if we think that we're going to get a backpack and go live in the woods for 6 months and with some matches and you know what I mean, a bottle of water, I think that's very unrealistic. I think that's a great point. But let me ask you this, because I've said this in older videos too. Even before we ever met, I totally agree. Your home is your castle. Bugging in, you got way more supplies than what you can carry. But let's say whatever the case may be, there's a nuclear, like you said, a chemical spill, a forest fire, whatever the case may be.
Right, tornado. Yeah.
You brought up a great point. of tragedies and marauders or whatever the case may be that can put a spike strip, line weight, whatever. But let's say you do have to bug out. Let's say again, I do not recommend it, but let's say you have to. I think it's good to have prepared just in case. Let's say you do, and even though I am for the home, your home is your castle, and if at all costs bug in, but if you do have to bug out, you need to be ready for that. But let's say they took your advice and they are in suburbia America somewhere, not right in the big city, and they do have to bug out. Yes, food's important. Yes, water's important. What do you think as far as defense and being able to protect themselves? Should they realistically? Now, I mean, I get it. We all want to take a tank. We all want to take a Barrett 50 BMG. But if you've really ever held a Barrett 50 BMG, you're going to find out, again, that's not realistic.
No.
I mean, you can put a bandolier and carry 200 rounds on you. You know what I mean? I mean, but realistically, I mean, I don't know what I think, but what do you think? Just your carry gun would be enough, or should you take more guns and ammo? And if you do take ammo, realize how heavy it is to carry. What is realistically your opinion? Rifle, shotgun, pistol. What should we take to prepare and to be able to protect ourselves if we do have to bug out with our family with supplies?
Yeah, that's a great question because self-defense is so critical. I definitely think you should have at least one rifle, one shotgun, and one handgun. That's my opinion. To take with you, at least one of each. Yeah, at least one of each. At least one rifle, at least one shotgun, at least one handgun. Whether it's a revolver, semi-automatic, AR, AK, bolt-action rifle, you need some kind of rifle for distance if you have to engage a threat at a distance. Also for hunting. And a shotgun is very versatile. You can use it for small game hunting. You can use it for close range defense. Shotguns are also easy to teach people how to use because you don't really, it's more forgiving. You don't have to have that precise sight alignment. It's easy for people to use in stressful situations. So you could give, let's say, your wife a shotgun, and even if she never shot one before, I guarantee you it would be easier for her to use a shotgun than a handgun, especially a semi-automatic handgun. So I'm a big fan of shotguns, some kind of handgun for sure, because to me, a handgun is essential because you're not going to always be able to carry your rifle or your shotgun. A rifle and a shotgun, they're heavy, they're 8-10 pounds, sometimes more. There's going to be times where you need to have free hands to do something, and you're going to have to set your rifle down. And if all you have is a rifle and you don't have a handgun, then you're kind of screwed in that situation. So you should always have a handgun everywhere. And my thing is, I personally, if we're talking about long-term, like a long-term situation where we're talking about, several months, long-term disaster, I really like manually operated firearms for a situation like that, just because of the reliability. I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that say that, AR-15s are very reliable, and, semi-automatics are very reliable these days. But still, I feel more comfortable, believe it or not. Of course, me personally, I have both. I have manually operated firearms and I have semi-automatics because they both have advantages, But to me, I really like a pump action shotgun or revolver or even a bolt action rifle because I know that I don't have to worry about jamming. I don't have to worry about gas regulation. I don't have to worry about feeding issues. I know that they're pretty reliable. They're easy to clean. I don't have to worry about the gas tube getting clogged or anything like that. So that's just my opinion, but I do like semi-automatic firearms. Obviously, I have an AR and semi-automatic handguns. So, but I really think that like a pump action shotgun is very good to have, in my opinion. So, yeah, I would have all of those, handgun, shotgun, rifle, and more important than what caliber and what kind of gadgets you have on it is, practicing with it, not just going to the range like once a year, but, really carrying your weapon being comfortable carrying it all day long and having a comfortable system to carry it, a holster or sling, whatever system you decide to carry your weapon with. Because if we're talking about a real self-defense situation, you're going to be carrying your weapon all day long. It's not just going to be, you're going to put it in your pocket, go to the store, come back, take it out of your pocket. You're going to have that gun on you all day long. So if you haven't done that before with your weapons, you don't want to find out after society collapses that your sling is uncomfortable or, you know what I mean? Or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your carry system. Yeah. So just getting very, very familiar with your weapons, knowing everything about them. If you decide on, let's say, an AR-15, know everything about the 5.56 cartridge, what are its limitations? What are its capabilities? Become an expert in the weapons that you plan to use,
Well, I know too, it's going to make a huge difference if you have a bolt action or if you have an AR or an AK. The magazine capacity, one's going to be able to carry more rounds than the other. I mean, I get that. So I'm not talking about that specific, but I'm just talking about, let's say they take your advice and let's say they take, whether it's, let's just say a revolver, a rifle, and a shotgun. Now, we understand that we want to have enough to protect ourselves. I mean, that's obvious. Like you said, if we can't protect ourselves, everything we have else is in vain. But let's say we've got a standard size vehicle. And if we do have a bug out, I mean, it depends on, I know what everybody's scenario is different, what they're going to be taking, whether it's water filtration, food, whatever. But let's say in a bug out situation, you've got a wife and 2 kids, and you're going to have other things in that car that's going to take up space. So let's say you do have a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. I know there's people who's going to say take 6 million rounds, but again, realistically, what would your advice or point be to taking rounds? And I know obviously it's going to be so much easier if your rifle is a 22 to be able to take more bulk of a 22 than it is shotgun, even if it's 2 3/4. So, I understand that. But in general, what do you think in a bug out bag or in a bug out situation like that, should we have prepped and ready where we can grab it and put it in the car, a reasonable amount of rounds that we can grab, haul, take, carry, and still have room for in our vehicle that will still, you feel like, keep us safe?
So you're talking about like how much ammunition to bring with you to your bug out location, not so much what you should have on your person. You're saying just how much to bring.
Well, I mean, if you on your person, if you got your regular magazine and your gun, or maybe an extra magazine, whatever. But I'm talking about, should we grab anything extra? Should we? What about for shotgun? What about for rifle? What about for pistol? Should we have something in our bag, or should we have a case, a to-go bag, or should we have like an ammo can? Like I've got ammo cans. Should we have some extra ammo in there? And if so, how much would you think would be an optimal number?
For me personally, I would feel comfortable with, for it depends on the rifle, what caliber, because if you're talking about 5.56, you can carry a lot more 5.56 than 308 or something like that. But for me personally, I would want at least 1,000 rounds for my rifle. For handgun, more, even like 2,000 would be, that's ideal, but that depends on the size of the cartridge. Like I said, if you're using a larger cartridge, you're shooting a larger firearm, it's going to be harder to take that much. So you may only be able to take a couple hundred rounds. But I would say at least a couple hundred rounds of rifle and pistol, in my opinion, I would feel comfortable with.
And to put that in perspective, like if you're using 9mm, there's 50. So, I mean, even in an area like this, you've got 200 rounds. So we're not talking about taking up a huge amount of space, but you still got 200 rounds just like this. And in 5.56, basically the same way. I've got a box of ammo. It's 100 rounds, and it's not very big at all. So even though that sounds like a lot, you're not like you're filling up a water jug that's a 5-gallon drum. I mean, it's
right.
So I was trying to put that in perspective. Most people probably know, but there are people out there that's really more into prepping than firearms, so they don't understand. So when you say something like a 200 or 300 rounds, like, oh my goodness, that's astronomical. But literally, you can put 200 or 300 rounds of 22 LR and not even know it's in your backpack. I mean, it's not like
Right.
it's, oh my goodness, so I'm just
Yeah.
trying to put that into perspective for people that maybe, isn't been exposed to firearms or understand ammo like we're talking, but I think that's very realistic. Now, what about shotgun? Because we do understand those rounds are huge and they are heavy. Now, if you have 1,000 rounds of 1 ounce slugs, you've got some serious weight to carry. So what do you think about, you got your handgun and rifle covered. Now, what about your shotgun? What do you think? And should you alternate rounds, like just grab birdshot, or should you grab some birdshot and slugs, or throw in some buckshot, or how should you prepare for your shotgun if you take a shotgun?
Yeah, you should. Yeah, for all your firearms, you should have separate ammo for hunting, separate ammo for anti-personnel, for security. So you have your hunting ammo and your security ammo, and that should all be ready to go. Like, you want to figure that out now. You don't want to be, rummaging through all your ammo cans thinking, oh, look, I got some birdshot, I better take this. You want to have it all squared away now. So all you got to do is just grab your can, put it in your car. But yeah, I like to have, for shotgun, I have small game loads. I like a number 7 shot is very versatile in my opinion. You can do a lot with a number 7. And buckshot, I'm a big fan of buckshot and slugs. So those are like the 3 that I like, is some kind of bird shot or small game shot, and then slug and buckshot, those 3. And I mean, like you said, it's big and heavy, so I wouldn't really go too big. I wouldn't carry too much, but even like minimum 200 rounds of shotgun would be ideal, split between, small game loads, buckshot, and slug, in my opinion. That's the minimum,
Well, that's fantastic. If you like what you're hearing, do me a huge favor. Would you go over and subscribe to the New York Prepper if you haven't already? And like I said, we're just scratching the surface on prepping. He's got a great prepping channel. Not only that, he does some fantastic stuff with firearms, current events, world events. So, and not only does he have a great channel, he's a super great guy with a love for this country. He loves freedom, the Constitution, just a wonderful American. And hopefully in the near future, like I said, we've got snow on the ground here. It's terrible. But when the sun begins to shine, the days start to get longer, good Lord willing, the New York Prepper is going to make a road trip into hillbilly haven. He's going to come to Kentucky, and we're hoping and really looking forward to doing a lot of stuff. We've tossed around all kinds of ideas. I've got a lot of yours in the comments. You all have told me some things that you would like to see us do, and we're going to certainly take all into consideration, try to get everything we can. But do me a favor, anything you'd like for us to see or shoot or do or talk about, let us know. And really, his channel says it's New York Prepper, but it's prepping. There's so many things that's involved. It's not just canned food. It's not just water. It's survival. It's being able to defend ourselves. He really has a great channel. So if you would check him,
Thank you.
His channel out, and we are really looking forward to him coming down. And like I said, any questions you'd have for us, leave them in the comments below. We'll do our best to check them. And like I said, this almost doesn't even scratch the surface or do his channel justice, trying to get everything in prepping in just a one little quick video. But I really appreciate him taking the time to sitting down with us and helping me, helping you to better be prepared, to better protect ourselves and our families. And we want to thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to kind of conclude or kind of inform us or let us know that's something that's really maybe important to help us to prepare, or maybe even save our lives one of these days, that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I think one area of prepping that people overlook is your physical fitness and your health. Make sure you're healthy, make sure you're physically fit, because you don't want to go into a bad situation already, ill or physically not fit. So be as healthy as you possibly can be, and be physically fit. That's important because you never know, what you're going to have to do after a collapse of society, whether it's a short term or long term. You need to be physically fit if you're bugging out, or if you're in a self-defense situation, if you have to do chores, if you're not in good shape, that's going to be a big problem. So, health and fitness, I think, is very important. And, I really just emphasize living in a safe area. To me, is one of the most important preps, because you could have all of the best preps, you could have 6 months worth of food, you could have thousands of rounds of ammo, but if you live in an area that's a danger zone, like I mentioned, you don't want to live near a nuclear war target, you don't want to live near a fault line, you don't want to live near a big city. Those are all danger zones. You don't want to live like 5 miles from a nuclear plant. Try to locate yourself in a safer area, because if me personally, and I've said this for many years, is I would rather live in an area that's very safe and far away from danger zones and have zero preps, no preps at all, than live in a danger zone or close to a danger zone with a lot of preps. Because you could have all the best preps, but if you live, right next to, like I said, a nuclear war target, and a nuke comes, not that I think that's going to happen anytime soon, but I'm just giving you an example.
Yeah, sure.
All those preps are for nothing, if you live in a bad area. So think about where you live and try to locate yourself in a safer location, away from danger zones, because even if you have zero preps, if that's the only prep you have is living in a safe area, that's the best. That's better than, you know what I mean? So that's something that I would really encourage people is think about. And I understand not everybody has the capability of moving. If you have a business or your job is a type of job where you can't move away from a big city, you have to live in a big city for whatever reason. I understand that. And if that's the case, then you need to have plans, bug out plans. You should always have multiple plans, like for bugging out. You shouldn't just have like one plan, because if that plan doesn't work, you should have like several plans. What are you going to do if you try to go on this road and the road is blocked? Are there, what are some other ways that I can get to my, bug out location? But that's kind of, there's so much to talk about, but I would say, living in a safe area is, to me, one of the most important preps, along with your health and your fitness. I would say those are actually more important than how much food and how much ammo you have, because if you're in bad shape, you're overweight, you have, different conditions, and you live in a danger zone, that you're really stacking the odds against you, so that's just something I would really emphasize.
And probably one of the first steps and greatest steps is subscribing to New York Prepper and Kentucky Patriots channel. That's a great start right there. And if you're new, so if you would please like, share, and subscribe. Like I said, if you haven't already, his channel is fantastic. I appreciate him so much. We're looking forward to him coming down. And this doesn't even scratch the surface. Like I said, there's so much out there, so many questions. He would love to hear from you. Same here. Anything that we can help you with or discuss. And I'm honest with you. There's things I'm not going to try to blow smoke. If I don't know, I'll just tell you, I don't know. Let me ask somebody, or I don't know. Let me ask New York Prepper. So I'll try to be as honest with you as I can. I appreciate you. I wish you and yours the very best. And I do appreciate Mr. New York Prepper so much, his channel, his patriotism, him coming on this channel and helping us, all the stuff he does. And I tell you, the guy carries a 44 Magnum. So what's that tell you? I mean, he's got an elephant gun. I mean, you don't get no cooler than that. So we do appreciate him coming on. We wish you and yours the very best, in this new year. And if you prep, and you've got some advice, something we didn't cover, something that you think that people overlook, let me know. Hey, we're on this together. I'm in here to learn. I do not claim to know it all in firearms, in self-defense, in prepping. I'm a student. I'm just here to learn. So may God bless you and yours again. Thank you to Mr. New York Prepper, the Kentucky Patriot, signing off.